It was easier for me to say that I was a recovering addict than to say I have bipolar 1. Erin Bozza tells us her story of recovery and bipolar 1, anxiety, PTSD. She is a geographical changer and hopes to be an example of hope. She talks about gratitude for her support group, getting the right medications and psychological treatment, and knowing her signs and triggers. She's on a journey of self-discovery and understanding while studying to be a certified peer recovery specialist. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
Erin Bozza is with us today, and we are super excited to have her on the show and to share her experiences. So thank you, Erin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I've seen some of your content on LinkedIn, and you're pretty open about your story. And so I thought,
yeah, absolutely.
That would be kind of an interesting place to start, right? Just to hear what your story is, and you're obviously passionate about mental health and what that means for you, right? You're putting out, to me, valuable content, and what's your why, what's your story, and all of that.
Great. Well, I think it's great what you guys are doing. Anything to bring,
I kind of agree with that mentality, and I think it's interesting how much stigma there is still, even after all the work that's been done and the advocacy that's being done out there. There's still a lot of stigma and shame around having a mental illness. So something we truly think is important to advocate for. So I love when we can join together and do that together.
I mean, I've experienced some stigma myself. It's easier for me to say that I was a recovering addict than it was to say that I have bipolar 1. And I share my story because in hopes that somebody is listening who's afraid to share their story because of the stigma, or they don't know how, or they're ashamed, or they're, and hopefully I can reach just one person and, help them through their journey.
Well, it's incredible, and I think bipolar is super difficult. I don't think people understand. It's not like you get a choice of whether you experience the symptoms of bipolar or not, right? It comes, and your challenge is to learn how to manage it. Right. So maybe it would be a great idea to kind of talk about and familiarize our listeners with what is bipolar 1, what does that look like, and then maybe share a little bit about your journey.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I'm like the textbook bipolar 1. I've bought in flights before and gotten on a plane on a whim. Had massive shopping sprees, been promiscuous. Just like the textbook definition of bipolar 1. I am.
And is that a little bit hard when you say I was, but I am? Almost like it's, and this is a hard thing for me too, is because I don't like the labels, right? Because it's not who you are, it's what you're dealing with. It's part of your reality. How do you see that?
Right. Well, I personally like labels because it helps me better understand myself. So it's not like labels define me. I don't allow it to define me, but I allow it to educate myself more on my illness and the symptoms that go along with it.
Yeah, I think that's super wise. And you're right. It's just like someone that has diabetes or someone that has heart disease. They're not labels, but they have to understand those illnesses in order to care for themselves, in order to take care of themselves appropriately and understand what's happening to them. So I like that perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So talk a little bit about your journey, if you would.
Sure. So I'll start day one because it's important. My biological mother gave me up to her sister when I was a couple of months old. And I've been very blessed to have many fortunate things happen to me. As much as I lived the wrong way and went down the wrong path, I've always gotten a second chance of life. And that experience where my biological mother gave me up to my real mom who raised me was my first chance at life, was my first blessing of life. Because had I stayed with my biological mother, it could have gone a very different way. I had a great childhood, full of love. We didn't have a lot of money, but there was a lot of love. I always knew that I was loved. We always showed love. Fast forward to age 13. Had experienced some traumas at age 13 and turned to alcohol and weed. And that was a comfort for me. It was an escape. And I didn't quite abuse it, but I did it every weekend. Went to parties, smoked weed, drank. Then at the age of 18, my father, who raised me, passed away. And that was when I got the diagnosis of bipolar 1, anxiety and PTSD. That's also when I started to turn to harder drugs in order to cope with my symptoms and life on life's terms. I didn't really understand it. My family didn't understand it. I was kicked out of my family's home because of the way I chose to live my life, the way my illness brought me to my knees and led me down this path. Because unfortunately, I do not have control over my life and my body and my mind when I'm in a manic state. And I'll explain more what bipolar 1 looks like for me later. So 2012, I had nowhere to turn. I burned all bridges. I was living couch to couch, friends' houses. I was what you call a geographical changer. I would move from state to state, trying to run away from my problem, but I always took Erin with me. I always took my illness and my addiction with me. So that never worked out for me. So I was at the end of my road, and I reached out to my biological mom. And I was on a very high amount of uppers. I won't go into, what exactly drugs they were, but they were a hard drug, and I was highly manic. And all of a sudden, I got this thought in my mind that my biological mom's husband and my half-brother were trying to kill me. And from there, it just spiraled. From there, it started with one thought. They kept trying to make me eat this pizza, and no one else was eating, and they kept forcing the pizza on me. So one thought in my mind said that they're trying to poison me, and it went to an extreme of the cops were in on it. They were my biological mother's husband's friends. The hospital was in on it because I was in upstate New York, and originally I'm from New Jersey, and the emergency room here are like packed. You are surrounded by a bunch of people. In the emergency room in upstate New York, I was the only patient there. So I thought that it was an abandoned building, and these were people that were in on it, and they were going to kill me. I stayed in that reality for about 2 weeks. I wouldn't take the medication because I thought the doctors were trying to poison me. And finally, I came out of it. and I had given the hospital my mother who raised me phone number. Now, we hadn't talked for a number of years, and I was like, I really need your help. I really need to come home. She was like, okay, you can come home. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 months, and I went back home to New Jersey, and I got into this intensive partial hospitalization program for 6 months. And that truly saved my life. I learned so many skills such as DBT, CBT, opposite actions, irrational and rational thoughts, things that would help me manage my illness better. And I was clean from all mind and mood altering substances, including alcohol. I was completely free of that, and I was on psych meds, and things were going really good. I had gotten this job, and I moved very quickly up on the ladder at this job, and things were going really great. And fast forward to a couple of years, I got this amazing boyfriend, I got this beautiful home, and I got this job as a property manager. I was managing 183 apartments, and I was my own boss. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I called the shop. I wore many hats. I was a little bit of maintenance. I was a little bit of the cleaning lady. I wore many different hats. And it started, I think it was 2017, where I was like, I can have one drink. I can just socially drink. And the drinking turned to weed. The weed turned into harder drugs. And before you knew it, I was on my knees. And, my mania, I get manic first. And what mania looks like for me is very high energy. I can go 3 to 4 days without sleeping and still have ample amount of energy. I make impulsive decisions. I'm very impulsive. I make irrational decisions. I have irrational thoughts. I shop a lot. I spend a lot of my money. I'm very promiscuous. I have bought in plane tickets before and just got up and went to a different state out of nowhere. Just like the feeling of being on top of the world and no one can stop me. No one can bring me down and nothing can get in my way. And, for years, I yearned that feeling. I would look forward to coming out of a depression because what goes up must come down. So after every manic episode, I crashed and there was a depression. So I would look forward so much to my depression ending and going into a manic episode because I loved it. I loved the way it made me feel. I loved that I was able to do so many things. At one point, I had 4 jobs. I was a property manager, real estate agent. I ran my own makeup business, and I did a little side work. So my mania allowed me to handle all those things at once. And but today is a different story. I fear my mania now. I don't want it to come back. It's so destructive. I harm so many people. Anyone that comes in my way, I do great harm to. And I harm myself. So mania is no longer my friend. And I have this debilitating fear of it coming back. I was with my ex for 6 years, almost 6 years. And I kept doing all these horrible things to him over and over again, and he kept taking me back. He took me back like 4 times, and he was like, Erin, I know it's not you, I know it's your illness, and we're going to get through this together. And, that was just so beautiful to hear, because I am not my illness. I am Erin, and my illness does not define me. It doesn't make me who I am. It's just simply a part of me. And he would say things like, I see the greatness in you. You have such an amazing heart. You care for so many people. You'll do anything for anyone. But when your mania takes over, then I know it's not you. You have, excuse me, you have shifted into this other person. And it's the truth. I can be like 3 different people. I can be regular Erin, I could be manic Erin, or I could be depressed Erin. There's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2. The difference between the two is I'm bipolar 1. I experience long periods of time with my highs and lows. So I can go, this last summer, I was in a manic episode for 5 months. And this summer, I lost everything. I lost the job. I started to get high with the tenants and party with the tenants as a property manager because I was my own boss. No one was looking after me. I had nothing and no one to hold me accountable for, so I could do whatever I wanted. So once my mania kicked in, then it was like this party girl kicked in. And, everyone wanted to be around her because she was so much fun. And, I lost my job. I went and got treatment and lost my ex, lost my beautiful home. And, I just celebrated 8 months clean and sober. And I'm on 2 mood stabilizers and an antipsychotic. And I believe, and I go to a lot of support groups. I go to a support group every day, sometimes 3 times a day. It's all different. There's a group called DBSA. It stands for Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. I actually facilitate that group. And there's NA, and then there's this sober organization called CFC in New Jersey. It stands for Coming Full Circle. So I believe that in order to live a fulfilled, functioning life every day, I need to take my meds, go to therapy, see a doctor, stay sober and clean, and go to my support groups. It's not just one thing. It's this whole big puzzle and little pieces to the puzzle to be able to live an everyday normal life, like the normies. So it is a struggle. It is a battle every day. I do need to fight my thoughts every day. This summer, which brought me to treatment, was I had my 2nd suicide attempt. And from the day that I made the attempt to December, I was having suicide ideations, basically suicide thoughts. I didn't necessarily want to die, but my brain was telling me that I wanted to die. Thankfully, I haven't had those thoughts since December. We're in the month of March 24th. And, but those are things that I need to fight off every day. That those irrational negative thoughts that tell me that I'm less than, people are better off without me, the world would be a better place without me. I'm stupid. I'm a terrible person. I fought really hard with being a good person or not because of my illness. But I came to the conclusion that I am a good person. I've just done bad things. And, it's okay that I did those bad things because I'm making up for them now. I'm making amends. And hopefully my experiences and the guilt and the shame that I have, and I'm also struggling with self-forgiveness. That's a huge part of my journey where I'm trying to seek self-forgiveness. But I believe if I do the next right thing and I use my experiences as learning stepping stones, that hopefully it will never happen again. And I just want to share the hope. I just finished a course to become a certified peer recovery specialist. And what that is basically, another word for it is a recovery coach. You work in the hospitals or rehabs as a peer, and you help people. For me, the reason I want to do it is my big why is to help people like me, who are in the same pain that I once was, and show them that there is a way to overcome it. Show them that there is a light in every darkest places, even the darkest places. And so that's, I believe, is my new calling. And I just finished the coursework. I have to do my internship. I'm very excited to use my life experiences, my strength, my hope, and help others and hopefully make a difference in their journey. Because I can only keep what I have by giving it away. And that pretty much sums up my story of where I am today.
Well, Erin, that's quite the story, and I have a lot of questions for you. Hopefully, I can kind of articulate them in a way that makes sense. But I think something that people don't understand is the challenge of the manic, right? Because like I heard you say, the manic, that's a feel good place, and now you fear the mania because you realize that that buying into that does not have the outcome that you would want. I mean, those are my words, but I'm kind of banking off of what you said.
The consequences are greater than the actual part of the euphoria.
Right. And so you've gone through these programs and learned some incredible skills, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and CBT, that cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm imagining that you have a support network around you that helps you through some of those pieces. Talk about your support network. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate to have an amazing support system. And that's a piece of the puzzle that I forgot to mention. And it's such an important, vital part of the puzzle. I live with my sister currently, and she is my main number one support person. She's very involved in my recovery. I think she has bought and read all the books on bipolar. She's always asking me like how my mood is. Do I feel a shift coming on? Always making sure I'm taking my meds. And yes, I do need to be held accountable sometimes, but I do feel as if that now comfortably I can take my meds without being made sure that I am. I have friends that have been with me on this journey for 20 years. They've seen every high, every low, and I've hurt them tremendously, but yet they're still there for me. And that's, speaks volume. I have friends for 10 years that have stuck by me. I have friends that I've met in the rooms of NA, Narcotics Anonymous, who can relate to my story. I have friends that met in my bipolar support group who can relate to my story. On an average, I text about 20 people a day. If I'm just sending a motivational quote, because that's my thing, I like to think that I'm a walking affirmation book, positive affirmation book. Because one of my life mottos is fake it till you make it. So I really try to be as positive as I can, even if I don't believe it. And just force those motivational quotes in. But yeah, support system is so important. Without them, I know my journey would be a lot harder and much more difficult if I didn't have them by my side.
Yeah, I agree. I think whether you have bipolar or mental illness or not, I think we all need a strong support network to remind us that we belong, right? And that we're loved, however we show up. So I love that you've created that, and that's intentional on your part. It sounds like that you've really created that, and you hold that, you hold that support network with great value, and you interact with them regularly, intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering, you shared that you're on 2 mood stabilizers and you're on an antipsychotic medication. Is that a hope that you'll never have to have symptoms of bipolar again?
Well, unfortunately, I've come to the rationalization that there will be a day that my mania returns, whether it be as strong as it once was, because I'm not using substances anymore. That just magnifies and intensifies the symptoms. Um, Hopefully it'll be a lot more manageable, but I have realized that, my symptoms may never go away, but the medication does help manage it every day. I'm on lithium, lamictal, and Risperdal. And they do help keep my symptoms at bay. Since January, I haven't experienced any depression, no manic symptoms. I actually, for the first time in my life, and I'm 33 years old, I was diagnosed when I was 18. I feel even. I don't feel like it's a roller coaster of highs and lows. I feel like it's an even keel of things. And I'm very happy to say that, because it took many trials of different medications over the last couple of years. I'm so happy that I finally found a cocktail, if you would, that actually works for me. Because many medications did not. And, I wasn't compliant with them, of course, because I would become manic and I would feel on top of the world. Or because medications take up to 6 to 8 weeks to actually work and get into your system, I would grow impatient and I would say, forget this. These medications are not working. I might as well just stop taking them. So I never really was compliant enough for the medication to work. But yeah, to answer your question, sorry to go off on a little tangent, but yeah, the medication definitely helps manage the symptoms.
Well, and I'm glad you went off on that tangent, because your story isn't unique to people struggling with bipolar. That's really part of the symptomology. That's part of the challenge, is to be able to stick with the medication when you feel good, right? When that mania is starting to kick on. And so I love that you've addressed that and talked about the challenge of staying, compliant. That's the word you use, compliant, but dedicated to taking that medication because you know that it helps and it makes a difference. I'm curious, and I think you kind of address this a little bit in the nature of your mania is likely to come back even on the medication on some level. How will you, or do you have a plan in place to recognize when it's coming back and what you'll do to protect yourself during that time?
I do. I have what's called a RAP packet. It's a wellness recovery action plan. and it states all my triggers, my first warning signs, and I have a whole big list. First and obvious one is that I'm not sleeping. If I go 24 hours without sleeping, it's time to hand over my phone to my sister, hand over the keys of my car to my sister, give her my credit cards. And that may seem drastic, but I'm willing to take those drastic steps in order for it not to evolve into this huge manic episode where I lose everything and have to rebuild my life over again for the umpteenth time. Like, I've had to pick up my pieces and clean up my messes so many times in life that I don't want to do it anymore. So any little bit of a sign, whether it be that I'm drinking like 8 cups of coffee, going on social media. Right now I don't have any social media because it is a trigger for me. I only do LinkedIn. Going on social media, posting frantically, reaching out to people of my past that I wouldn't talk to, going online shopping, doing online shopping. Just those are, my biggest warning signs. So if I see an inkling of those, I know that I need to turn my belongings and my things over to my sister.
That's a huge step, and here's my question for you, and because I don't know the answer to this, but I think you might, is when you're starting to feel that mania coming on, will you be able to take that action? Will you have the capacity to take those steps on your own?
In the past, if you were to ask me if I was manic, I would be in complete denial. I would say, why can't you just be happy for me that I'm actually feeling good, that I'm no longer depressed? Why can't you just be happy for me? And I can say today that I hope that my next manic episode I will be able to see, because there is some sort of physical sensation that goes along with mania. I get very hot, I get very tense, and I like my mind, it feels different. So there are physical sensations that go along with mania. And I think that I can use the skills I've learned in partial hospitalization and IOP to one of the skills they like to use, I don't know if it's called acronyms, where like STOP. The S stands for something, the T stands for something, the O and the P stand for something. So I can use that practice of stop and, check my surroundings, think about my thinking, observe, and practice. I think those is what is outwitting me. Don't quote me. I don't have my skills notes out at the moment, but so I can use those skills I've learned to either slow down the process or become more aware. Because in the past, I was not aware of it in the slightest bit.
That's incredible. And I love the detail that you go into of creating a plan. You're very intentional about creating a plan to try and keep yourself safe because you know that mania typically is what comes first, and you know what that feels like, you know what the signs are, and you have a plan. So once you hand over all of your things, all your possessions to protect from those consequences, what happens if you continue down the mania and your medication isn't managing it? Then what's next?
Well, I would obviously contact my doctor and tell my doctor, or if I can't contact my doctor, I know I can lean on my support system and rely on them that they will contact my doctor for me, and tell them that I'm exhibiting signs and it seems to be progressing and I need a med change or I need to be seen today. or I need to go back into the hospital where I can safely be, I don't want to say watched, but I can, a hospital, to me, I always show a stay at the hospital is like a vacation from reality. You know, you're in there for a week or 2 weeks, and the outside world is like non-existent, and you're just simply working on yourself. So worst case scenario, I would sign myself into a hospital.
That's 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 not light. I know people who have been through your path, right, many times with bipolar, and they have been successful at identifying the trigger pieces, right, those symptoms that start to show up and the signs of it, and they do exactly what you just said. They check themselves into the hospital to keep themselves safe while they experience this bipolar episode, right? And they have, just like you, it's not, it has to be a decision that's made beforehand, and it has to be an action that you take before it gets out of control. And that's a learning process in and of itself. It's not like you come with a manual that says, okay, here I have bipolar and this is what I'm going to do. It just doesn't work that way, right? It's usually a process of I'm going to try this and it didn't work, and I'm going to try something else. And there's, like you said, those consequences that you don't want to have anymore. And so it's an interesting journey. I would really love to be able to have conversations with you in the future too, and maybe even have you on the program, because I think the information you're sharing is vital for people to understand that in a bipolar episode, you don't have the capacity to make those decisions, and probably are not willing to allow other people to help you make good decisions.
Yeah, sometimes, Shelley, the best I can do is write it out.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply sit back and wait until the episode takes its course, and I either crash and go into a depression, or I come out of it. Like, that's sometimes the best I can do.
And that has to be enough, right?
Yeah.
But like you talked about, you still are dealing with the ramifications, the feelings, the shame, the guilt, all of that you've experienced based on your bipolar, and that's tough. That's a tough place. And I love how you've surrounded yourself with people that can give you positive feedback, that can give you perspective of, the difference. I like the way the Erin who's a normie, I think that was the word you used, a normie, that, the Erin that's depressed, the Erin that is experiencing manic, a manic episode. And I can see some of the strategies that you've put in place and that you've learned in order to help you manage something that you're going to probably live with for your entire life, and starting to have that acceptance of this really is what it is.
It was very hard for me to come to that acceptance of, it's never going away. This is something that I'm going to have to learn to live with, because it's never going to leave my side. And, I'm going to die with being bipolar. I choose my words very carefully. I try not to say I am bipolar rather than I have bipolar. Because yes, it's going to stay with me. It's just like I mentioned earlier, it's just a part of who I am. And I've come to an acceptance with that. And it took me a good 15 years to come to that acceptance, but I'm here now, and that's all that matters.
Well, something else that you mentioned that I think is fairly interesting and complicates the bipolar situation, and maybe the bipolar makes you more at risk of what you said, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of the experiences that you've had in an episode, in a bipolar episode, I'm making an assumption here, and you correct me, is contributing to that PTSD.
Yes and no. Also, things that have happened prior to my diagnosis that I didn't have any control of. I usually say when people say that I have PTSD, I kind of feel a certain way to it, because I feel as if the trauma in my life I brought on. When I think of trauma, I think of bad things that have happened to you. There was one incident when I was a teenager I had no control over, and it brought me to using drugs and alcohol. But the other incidents, like my psychotic break, maybe I didn't have control. I definitely didn't have control over it, but I didn't do the maintenance. I wasn't proactive about my illness, which led me to there. So, I struggle with that diagnosis, but I do experience some of the symptoms like flashbacks, nightmares. I can't be in crowds sometimes. I can't have my back face to people. I have trust issues. So, but, it's just another part of who I am.
Right. And it's just another feature of what you have to be aware of, right? And how you have to take care of yourself. And that your journey of healing or growing and learning is going to be lifelong as well, because these are challenges that you have to face and figure out. And they're not always going to stay the same, because as you grow and learn and mature, those experiences and the way it manifests are probably going to shift some too.
Absolutely. And, my symptoms may look different than a couple of years from now than they do today, and that I have to shift and revolve my treatment towards, the different ways my symptom shows itself.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think everyone can hear your story and hear the challenge that really faces you in a compromised situation, right? With your episodes starting. So I'm absolutely, I'm so curious, right? I'm so curious and want to ask lots of questions, because I know people that struggle just like you've struggled, that still struggle. And so I guess the question that I want to ask you is, for somebody who's struggling with bipolar and similar things that you've experienced, and maybe a family member, what's your advice to them, and how would you talk to them to help them understand what they're experiencing and what they can do to get help?
My number one advice would be listen to your support. When the people that love you and care about you are telling you that they notice a change in you and it's time to get help, listen to them. Don't fight them on it.
And that's,
and then,
yeah. Go ahead.
Obviously, go seek help. Don't be ashamed. This is something that you cannot fight. Yes, I mentioned that I have to fight every day to combat my thoughts, but there's no running away from bipolar. You must face it. There's an, I don't know if that's the right word, acronym, but for fear, it's face everything and recover. And that's the way I choose to live my life. I take things head on. But my biggest advice would be to listen to the people who love you and care about you.
I like that. And who would you recommend, if somebody's getting ready to face this for the first time, or, knows that they need help, where should they start?
Sometimes starting at a support group may be a good start to get to know your symptoms and know yourself a little better. If you don't want to go to a doctor right away, go to a support group, find people who are in the community who are able to be productive members of society. Ask them questions, how I'm experiencing this. These groups that I run, they're peer support groups, so they're peer run. we're not professionals. We're not therapists. We're not doctors. We can only give our experience and our support. So I would not go to Google. Definitely not. I would not turn to Dr. Google. That's for sure, because I've done that. Excuse me. I've done that myself and diagnosed myself as a schizophrenic when I don't exhibit any of the signs. But I was like, that seems right. That seems like I sometimes do that, but I was doing those things in a manic episode. So, it's not schizophrenic, but schizophrenia. But yeah, I would suggest checking out support groups in your area.
I love that advice. And if somebody, are you open to people reaching out to you and asking you for support? Is that something that you're interested in? And if somebody,
Absolutely.
if they wanted to reach you and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can write me an email. I don't feel comfortable giving out my phone number, but they definitely can write me an email. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I have. Erin Bozza, ErinBozza.
Fantastic. And do you want to share your email, or you just want them to find you on LinkedIn?
They could just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, excellent. I love that. I think a lot of people are going to relate to your story, and I can't tell you how much it means to me to have you share that and be willing to share something that's been really, really hard, so that you for the purpose of helping others. Because I think it's that why that you talked about that makes everything you've been through really worth it.
Absolutely, yes. It's pretty much the only way that I can turn such a negative story and a negative outcome and life experience into a positive one by helping others.
Yeah.
You have to flip it, right? You can't stay in that negative. So you have to find what is the positive angle to this.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work in and of itself.
Oh, yes, it is. It took me a long time to be able to combat those thoughts and change that thinking around.
And I can hear that you're still working on it. Like you're still in that practice, and you're reminding yourself of what your skills are and those acronyms that you talked about with STOP and FEAR, and you're using your tools. And I think that's incredible, because that's really one step at a time, right?
Yeah, just one more that I told you I'm a walking positive affirmation. One more I want to tell everyone is hope. Hold on, pain ends. So hold on, pain ends. When you think you're at the end of the road and you can't see any light and you feel like if you have nowhere to turn, this is all temporary and it will go. Everything must have an end. So, these are all things that are temporary, they're not permanent, and you can get through it. We do recover.
I love that. Can I quote you on that one?
Sure.
Nice. I love that.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute honor, and
I'm pretty sure I'm not the one that made it up.
it's just been an absolute honor and privilege to hear your story and have you share your thoughts and ideas. So I just want to thank you, Erin, for being willing to be vulnerable here with us.
Thank you. And thank you to you and Kurt for welcoming me and inviting me to do this wonderful experience. I think it's really great what you two are doing by bringing awareness to something that was so hush-hush for so many years. And I think it's great, and I hope that you guys keep on doing it and keep bringing the word out and spreading that awareness and ending the stigma. And again, thank you for giving me a chance to share my story.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on.